Elsa? Do you want to build a snowman?
This is my own private domicile and I will not be harassed! Bitch!
Okay, bye.
Seems legit.
She seems so sad. Welcome to Cordkillers, our mission to report the intel from the front lines of the cord-cutting revolution so that you can watch the stuff you want, when you want, where you want, on whatever darn device you choose. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, man, I'm Brian Brushwood, and I actually did not pick that opening video. That was your pick. I had seen it, but it didn't occur to me to use it for the show, so I was glad that you dropped it in the doc, Tom. Thank you so much.
It makes me laugh every time. I ran across it. I just threw it up there on a whim. Like, I don't know what else Brian's got up his sleeve, but sure, this makes funny because I watched Frozen, and I love Breaking Bad.
Yeah, so there's that. Hey, man, you want to just dive right into it? We don't have a guest to distract us. It's just you and me and the stories that matter to us.
Let's do it. Let's acquire that primary target.
Yeah.
Target acquired. So our primary target today is the Netflix earnings report that came out this afternoon. We don't care so much about the earnings, but if you're interested, 86 cents per share, $1.27 billion in revenue. I think what's more interesting to people is the subscriber numbers, which were up. Netflix gained 2.25 million domestic subscribers, bringing their total in the U.S. to 35.7 million. They also added 1.75 million subscribers internationally. International subscribers make up 25% of streaming revenues. So they have a total of 48.35 million subscribers worldwide. They say the international is eventually going to pass domestic. They're very bullish on it. They're pouring a lot of money into that. They also mentioned the second season of Orange is the New Black will start June 6th. Hemlock Grove comes back July 11th. And before both of those, Derek, the Ricky Gervais show that is made for Channel 4 but run by Netflix everywhere else in the world outside of the UK, comes back May 30th.
Yeah, right on, man. They also took a look at the trailer for Orange is the New Black Season 2, and I had this weird epiphany where it's like, oh, this whole show she's going to be in jail. And this is the dumbest thing to realize, but it's like, you go into it the first season and it's very clearly this small amount of time and you're watching this relationship as it goes and you can picture coming out the other side. But then I realized, like, if she gets out of jail, they don't have a show anymore. And I just realized that we're just going to spend the entire series watching her in jail, which is,
well, with the flashbacks, right? So you do get outside the jail sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know, but also, like, you also crave some kind of resolution for some of these issues and miscommunications and backstabbings and stuff. But then all of a sudden I realized, wait, that's not the show. The show is the agony of being in this situation and watching things go wrong. And I don't know why it took me this long to realize it about it, but then it made me wonder if I'm going to enjoy it knowing that it will never quite get resolved.
Well, you know what will get resolved? Netflix is going to raise prices.
Now, how much? Up to what? $10?
Well, they didn't say for sure. They said $1 or $2, depending on the country, and they're going to do it sometime this quarter. And existing users won't have their prices raised right away. They'll be grandfathered in. The only thing we have to go on is that in Ireland, I think they raised the price by $1, and they grandfathered in existing users for 2 years before they get their price raised.
Man, weirdly, good for them. I don't care. I'm not bothered. $8 is stupid cheap. $10 is stupid cheap.
But no, Brian, remember when Quickster happened and they were like splitting out the DVDs and it was $7.99 each and it was a price rise. This was going to be the death of Netflix. This is not the reaction you're supposed to have, Brian. You're supposed to cry havoc and let slip the trolls of the internet.
I'm sure that'll happen, but the fact is, I think most people realize that, especially like by itself, it's a tremendous value even at $10. But when you compare it to what the cable companies are charging and what cable companies give you, it's like it'd be a steal at $20, even $30 a month. With moderate increases in the quality of the back catalog, I would pay easily $30 for Netflix if they wanted. I think we've talked about this before, and I think I'm in the minority of people who gladly would pay much, much more for Netflix.
You're definitely in the minority of people who pay $30, I think. I mean, but I actually agree with you that I feel like this is good news. That Netflix feels like they can say, look, we're going to just go $1 or $2. They're handling it right by saying, existing customers, we're not going to bring the hammer down on you right away. So, hang in there. You're going to be fine. And they're saying, we think we can get this. We think it's a desirable enough service that we can get a couple of bucks extra. We tried it out in Ireland. It seemed to have worked. That's all good news for Netflix.
Well, especially it's even good news for customers if, and this is a big if, I'm assuming that they're able to take that increased revenue and get a larger back catalog, license more programs to have on there. I think that almost all of us would be comfortable paying a couple bucks extra if we were told flat out that it meant you would have a bigger access to more content, right?
Well, and Netflix has been saying that. I don't think they've ever been shy about spending money where they need to spend money. But I think what they've been saying is, look, we've been adding all this amazing programming, all of these originals that are hits with people. You know, there's the 3 we just mentioned, but there's also the Marvel stuff coming. There's more kids stuff coming. And they're saying we can continue to do all the great things we've been doing even better. So I would expect them to pour money into original programming as much as acquisitions, I would think.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, again, watching that Orange is the New Black trailer and thinking about how much... think back to when we covered the announcements of doing originals, and we didn't have much to go on outside of they announced, like, we're going to start making our own stuff, and we hope it's going to be good because we're hiring all this top-tier talent. And the fact that it was good, of course, was fantastic, but there's a legitimacy to that model now that is becoming, like, the fact that everything's going into a second season and now we expect it to be HBO levels of quality entertainment, and they haven't had a single dud.
Well, and you don't anymore think I must watch the Netflix show, right?
Right.
Like, you can say, like, well, you know what, that Hemlock Grove isn't for me. Right. Like any other network, you're not going to watch every single show on a network, so they've grown up.
Yeah, and I wonder what level of saturation they can hit before we get enough, or how much is the right balance. I think they're doing a good job where they're going to have a new release of a new season every 2 to 3 months all year long, right? And I think that I don't know how much more we need as far as the hard numbers go of how many programs they should be creating concurrently.
And the other thing we didn't hear about, they said $1 or $2 for new customers. They didn't say anything about adding new tiers, right? We heard them previously talk about the idea of, if you want to stream 4 shows at once, we might add a tier. They didn't indicate anything. Doesn't mean they're not going to do it, but they definitely weren't trotting that one out. So either they've put that off for a while, or they don't think that gets them good press, so they've decided not to talk about it.
Yeah, that's another thing that I wonder what will be different, because right now we get the 2 streams, which is enough. It's me versus the kids on a Saturday. The kids are watching something together, and I'm watching something in the office. But outside of that, as the kids get older, you're going to start to see them wanting to watch different material, and then it may be a problem. I may have to bump up to a higher tier at some point.
They also called out AT&T in their investor letter, particularly saying, yeah, their streaming sucks. You know why? Because they haven't done a deal with us like Cablevision and Comcast and all those great fellows. Even though the Comcast deal was controversial, they're putting the pressure, they're putting the screws to AT&T to come to the table and do some negotiating.
Yeah, and I don't even mind it. I understand that all of this is delicate third rail territory when it comes to net neutrality discussions, but the fact is, I mean, Netflix is a major, major institution taking up a third of all bandwidth or whatever. Seems like they should be talking to providers to ensure a certain basic level of service.
A couple of other things, minor things. They're going to launch on TiVo set-top boxes for a couple of cable operators. Like, they haven't said who, but we're guessing places like RCN. This is a test move into being on set-top boxes in the U.S. They're already on set-top boxes in like Sweden and UK. And not shockingly, they came out against the Comcast Time Warner Cable merger. Said it would possess even more anti-competitive leverage to charge arbitrary interconnection tolls for access to their customers.
Yeah, that makes sense that they'd say that.
Yeah. I was not like, what? They're against it.
What a bold new stance they're taking.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even know what else there is to say. Good job, Netflix. Continue to expand your lineup. That's all.
Let's move on to that secondary target.
Yeah.
Hey, big thanks to CEO Chet Kanogia for coming on the show last week and chatting with us about the upcoming Aereo Supreme Court case. That happens tomorrow as we're recording this. So there's all kinds of analysis all over the internet here. And my thought was, well, not everybody who watches or listens to Cordkillers is going to get to it before they've actually argued in front of the Supreme Court. So a lot of what we might talk about, what they'd say, we already know. We've covered it. And you're probably going to know by tomorrow midday anyway. It's going to happen, I think, at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And then we won't actually hear anything. We won't actually get a decision from the Supreme Court right away. It takes a while for them to go back and deliberate and write their opinions and all of that. So what I want to talk about is predictions. Let's gamble, man. Let's lay some odds. Who's going to win this thing and how?
Well, and plus also, we've mentioned that, of course, there's scenarios where Aereo wins. There's scenarios where Aereo uses. But my prediction, if I'm going to make a guess, it's going to be an unsatisfying middle ground where they technically answer the specific question put before them, but do not give us any insight about whether or not this is a universally acceptable strategy. I would like to believe that Aereo will win, if for no other reason than because it would give a direct answer. If Aereo wins, it makes sense because everything from that point forward is clearly, there are clear answers. If Aereo loses, all it does is make everything even more murky for longer term. Because if what they're saying is, even though Aereo has, by the letter of the law, completely stayed within their bounds, the fact that the overall packaging of this entire system does the same thing as if they were breaking the law, if they decide that and go with it, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter if you actually obey the law if the end result accomplishes a thing that would be done without breaking law. Does that make sense? Or with breaking the law?
I think you're on the right track because they're probably going to rule very narrowly, whichever way they rule. And so I don't think we're going to have these widespread implications. They're gonna try very hard not to rule in a way that's going to affect cloud storage. There's all these amicus briefs filed by companies like Microsoft and Google about that sort of thing. You know, Ayaz Akhtar was on the show this morning on Daily Tech News Show, and he said he thinks they won't rule at all. He thinks they'll remand it back to the courts, which would be really unusual at this stage in the game. I don't know that I agree. My gut feeling is they're gonna. I'd have to say it's 50-50 to me which direction they rule. I think they're likely to rule in favor of Aereo, but I think they're going to rule very strictly to the point it might actually cause some difficulties for Aereo in the way they can roll things out.
I agree. First of all, you and I are of the same mind on this. I think that's exactly how it's going to go. But I can't wrap my mind around any scenario where they full on take the broadcaster's side. The idea that you can do a legal thing, but if it accomplishes the same service as an illegal version of it, that makes it just as bad as an illegal one. That makes no sense to me. And it's hard for me to believe they would set that precedent because that would have ripples, a lot of unfortunate ripples in other areas.
Yeah, and this court particularly is very well known for not wanting to cause ripples, which sometimes to their detriment. People come back from Supreme Court cases, most famously patent cases, going, "Well, that didn't help."
Right.
They ruled on the very narrowly on the issue at hand, but it doesn't give us any guidance for similar issues in the future. So I could almost see a case where the Supreme Court says, yes, Aereo is operating correctly. They're operating within the law, and yet the Utah decision isn't affected, right? Like somehow they write it where it very narrowly only applies to the decision being ruled upon here, and the Utah court says, yeah, but they didn't talk about our particular way of looking at this, which Utah said. It's a public performance. And I don't know that they're going to get to that public performance part of it necessarily if they rule very narrowly saying, yes, the fact that it's a single antenna on a DVR that is not technically live makes it legal, done.
Yeah, that part actually doesn't really sit well with me. The idea that because there's a 4 to 10 second delay, it's not really live, that I don't think holds a lot of water.
Well, but it does if they look at Cablevision, right? And I think that's what Mr. Kanogia was trying to point to was the Cablevision decision was if you have a DVR out there and it's only available to one user, that's legal. That's settled law. And so it's less about Betamax and less about VHS and those sort of things and more about, hey, we're just doing the same thing. Granted, you can access things 4 to 10 seconds after they hit, but they're not live. And we're not directly giving them an over-the-air broadcast. I could see a court going, yeah, you know what? That works.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's interesting how much of this case really just boils down to a clarification of definitions. It's not even like we need a ruling on a new idea. It's just like, well, is this live? Is this an antenna? Is this a private performance? And I don't know how many of those are. I don't think we'll get clear answers for all of those questions. I think we will get one or two enough to satisfy this and kick it back. But here's my question. So we both think that Aereo is going to come out largely. I don't think they're going to strike down Aereo and say, yes, this is definitely illegal, shut down. But I am very, very curious about what happens to the cable industry when there's a precedent for this and when they define it as being legal. Like the idea that all of a sudden every cable, I don't know what happens to the broadcasters if all of a sudden everyone has a way to access that content for free, even though they're definitely sending out that content for free.
Well, it calls their bluff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because they don't provide their over-the-air broadcasts for free. They charge advertisers. And people with antennas are participating in Nielsen. Like, this is a very vetted business model. It was the only business model for 20-some years before cable came along.
Right.
So what the broadcasters are saying is we won't make as much money off of those viewers, but Aereo is actually able to be rated by Nielsen. That was an early complaint, but now Nielsen is starting to take account online viewing, and so somebody with Aereo can count in the ratings now. I don't see that it really is as harmful as they think. What they're mostly worried about is the knock-on effect. Will cable companies try to do this themselves, set up their own areas? Will cable companies do deals with Aereo?
Right.
And will it grow to a point where it starts to eat into cable retransmission fees? And what do they do then? Frankly, I wonder, could they not just charge more money to the advertisers?
Well, and I'll tell you, I think you nailed it when you made your prediction as far as what the broadcasters will do if this becomes a legal way for them to, for cable companies to circumvent the retransmission fees. What they do is they take what we now consider the good entertainment, the HD premium content feed, and they make that if you want to carry that, you have to pay a retransmission fee. You could have the over-the-air crap where we have reruns of Leave It to Beaver playing 24/7, and who cares? Basically crapify, which is a weird way to go about it, but it makes sense. It seems like a way that they could keep on that just as the cable companies need to stay on the tit of keeping everybody subscribed, and that's why they'll offer you ridiculous deals and lower your payments in order to keep you on cable. Likewise, they have become accustomed, broadcasters have become accustomed to receiving those retrans fees, and they're just going to do whatever it takes to keep getting those.
Let me run this quote by you. Petitioners have created a billion-dollar industry based entirely on the taking of somebody else's property, each of which represents a huge investment by the copyright owners. That comes from Stephen Croft, a Hollywood lawyer, talking to the Supreme Court 3 decades ago during the arguments in the VCR case.
Huh. Wait, say it again. Say it again to me. Let me wrap. Now that you pulled the twist of playing it before. Say it again. Now that
Petitioners have created a billion-dollar industry based entirely on the taking of somebody else's property, each of which represents a huge investment by the copyright owners.
Man, that really is. That's great. That's a good quote. Makes sense to me then.
And the Supreme Court at that time, very different Supreme Court, ruled 5-4 in 1984, saying, look, there's no basis in any kind of law to prohibit that activity. So, they get to do it. Just if it's bad for your business, we're sorry.
Yeah.
But it's legal. Totally different court these days. And honestly, I won't be shocked if they rule for the broadcasters, because I think it's very close. And this is not a very obvious issue for this court on freedom of business and all of that side of things versus social good, which is usually what these things come down to.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what the weirdest thing to me is the whole, cable operators having a voice. And, of course, cable providers want very much to figure out a way to not pay retransmission fees, mainly because that's how cable came to be. In the 1970s, all of cable was because one guy running an apartment had set up an aerial and then ran it to all of his apartments, and then ran it to the apartment across the street. Essentially, all of cable was built on the unauthorized retransmission of broadcast signals.
Well, and as we've pointed out before, and we talked about last week, the law is actually that cable companies must carry broadcast television, because at the beginning, the broadcast companies were worried about being left out if you had all these cable channels on there and a company decided, you know what, we're just not going to carry that ABC station because the signal's a little wonky. They made it the law that you have to carry it. And then they said, well, wait a minute. We're getting fees for all these networks we bought now. We want fees for our broadcast networks. So they're like, okay, fine. Now, the new rule is you have to carry a broadcast station unless the station says you have to pay them. And then you have to pay them and you don't have to carry it. So, you know, I would bet 100% that if Aereo loses this case, you will see legislation be proposed by the broadcasters.
Oh, my God. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one thing I'm certain of.
Yeah. Agreed. You know what I'm certain of is that I have 1,727 best friends in the world. I'm sorry, 1,728 best friends. Breaking news
That's so
here.
weird. You know why that's weird?
Why?
I have the same number of best friends in the world.
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, we're talking about our fabulous patrons over at patreon.com/Cordkillers. Thank you guys so very much for, one of the things I love about Patreon is the fact that there's a number of people who embrace killing the cord, less as a way to watch what they want when they want, but for them it's a cost-cutting measure, or it's like they do the chicken challenge and they love getting our news to them about where they can see all of their favorite content. So many people perceive like we're saving them $100 every month. And they kick us a couple of dollars back per episode as a thank you. We think that's great. It's made possible easily one of my favorite moments of the entire week. Sitting down, talking to Tom, talking about something we're so endlessly fascinated in. And the fact that you guys are amused and entertained means the world to us. Thank you very much to all of our patrons.
100% agree. We couldn't do it without you. And thank goodness we can do it thanks to you.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Let's do Signals Intelligence. Signals Intelligence is a way of saying we're talking about services that let you stream stuff. We already talked the crap out of Netflix, so let's talk about something else. This one's kind of weird, actually. A&E and History Channel have both gone, and I think they're part of the same company, which is why they're both doing this, live on iOS and the web. When I say live, I mean like you can just watch the linear channel that you would watch on cable on the web and on iOS. Now, cord cutters, beware. This isn't as good as it sounds because you do need a cable subscription to log in and verify.
I'll tell you what. This is I'm okay with this. I'm weirdly okay with the cable authentication or whatever. The more we see this stuff, the more I'm convinced that we're going to start to see virtual cable providers come in entirely as over-the-top services where nobody will come, nobody will install a cable at your house. Just you will pay a service and it will get you a password so that you can authenticate on all of these individual services. It's like a cover charge, basically a fee to get in the club.
It's a fast pass.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's like buying the bus pass every month, and you just get to ride for free.
Or buying like a South by Southwest wristband that gets you into all the events. Yeah,
exactly. The reason I think this is significant is because instead of TV everywhere, which is the cable company's way of not giving you TV almost anywhere, but still allowing you to stream some television sometimes. My DirecTV app does it, for instance. I can watch some channels live on my DirecTV app. This is the channels doing it themselves, saying, yeah, you still got to authenticate with cable channels, but we're authenticating with a bunch of cable channels. And we're saying you go to our website, you go to our iOS app, we're holding the reins here instead of being on somebody else's app.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to make an amended, back to our predictions about Aereo. I'm going to say not only will Aereo emerge still able to be in business and I will say largely vindicated for its platform, I'm going to say in the next 3 to 4 years, I think Aereo will be that virtual validation service, that cable authentication. I think they will work out a deal where like you can get Aereo for $8 or for $28, something, now all of a sudden it's over the top and you have essentially cable on all of your devices to watch anything you want.
I think Apple's going this way too, because they've got, we'll hear about this more in Frontline. So they've got so many apps now that I have a feeling they could strike a deal to be like a pass provider for these sorts of places. And if Aereo were an app on Apple TV, you bet that they would be able to do that. So going back to Aereo, I think it's a good thing if Aereo wins because CBS was one of the companies that said, we'll do our own. We'll roll our own Aereo. And that would be great.
Sure.
If we had choice and competition, and if that was CBS's way of getting retransmission fees from the cable companies, if they were to say, look, we're going to roll our own. You don't like it? You got to keep paying our transmission fees, and then we'll let your subscribers authenticate with our service and not have to pay extra for it.
I'll tell you what, man, so much good stuff happens for consumers if Aereo passes this test, and so much misery happens for consumer if it doesn't. It's really going to slay me if it gets struck down.
But anyway, couple of channels, couple of significant cable channels hosting a live stream on their own website. It's another one of those tiny steps in the right direction.
Yeah, it is.
Let's gear up.
Shall we, sir?
With our lips. I say,
Did you say with our lips?
yeah, I said with our lips.
Right on.
It's
I don't
talking
blame
about
you.
Amazon Fire TV voice search, which we've criticized for only searching Amazon, is going to get better. Turns out they announced Thursday, Fire TV will be able to work with Hulu Plus, Crackle, and Showtime starting later this summer. And Netflix's CEO Reed Hastings, in that long-ass investors letter, said, we expect to support voice search on the Fire TV later this year.
You know, I love this. I'm one of the few people who absolutely adores Apple Siri on iOS devices. I think it largely works exactly as advertised. I think that that I have grown accustomed to the idea of a voice searchable, or a voice-enabled personal assistant. I think that in the next 5 years, we're just going to see more and more of this. We're gonna start to see more of a Jarvis-like experience where there will be personalities that you can buy and program different voice that will become smart and anticipate your needs and start running better and better. And yes, you know, there are kludgy aspects to it and there's stuff that goes wrong, but man, oh man, is it getting better faster than I dared hope. And I'm excited to see stuff like that.
And the other side of it is on the Fire TV in particular, they made a big deal and they made the promise that this was going to be the box where you just speak to it and it tells you where to watch the show and you don't have to think about it. And that is so not true out of the box right now.
Yeah.
Because it only shows you Amazon stuff on that voice search. Weirdness that Scott Johnson and I have noticed aside, most of the time you're just going to get Amazon. So once they start adding all these other apps into the voice search, I don't understand why they need to add them individually, but it must be an SDK thing. That starts to make this really compelling because let me tell you right now, when I say the Shield pops up.
Yeah.
And I'm off to the races. I don't even think about it. I don't even think like, well, I have to say it in this way like I do with the Xbox, right?
Right.
You just talk and it works.
Well, and I'll tell you what's going to get better is as when it starts talking back to you fast and when you're able to take, I'll tell you, here's the biggest thing voice search needs is the ability to handle stammering and stuttering and restarting the way that we talk in real life, where it's like you're halfway through saying like, no, I mean this or this, I mean that, you know, that kind of thing. As that gets smoothed out, I think a lot of people will make the jump to using that as their preferred way to interact.
Oh, yeah. When Google Now type logic or Cortana from Windows Phone type logic shows up and you can just go, which Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. am I on now? And it's like, you're on episode 7, season 2. You're like, great, play that.
Contextual awareness. When you're able to say, give me the contact information for, who was it? We met last Thursday at that party at Larry's place. And then it's able to say like, oh, you mean this? Yeah, I think totally. I think that's coming faster than we expect.
Faster than we're prepared for.
Yeah.
What you should also be prepared for are books in your face, giving you knowledge at TomMerrittBooks.com. Why am I saying that? Because I'm on this show and Scott Johnson and I sell books and we thought, well, you know what? We should tell people about it. So I'm going to do it. I have some novels over there. I have the chronology of tech history. But mostly what you see over there on the right are the Amazon Kindle singles that Scott Johnson and I have been doing. Every month, we put out a 99-cent book that lists all the things that happened in technology history for that month. And Scott makes illustrations around a bunch of them. And they're great. If you know Scott Johnson's illustrations, you know they're great. So if you're into that, you can go all the way back to November right now and get all the monthly singles at TomMerrittBooks.com.
God, I love that you're doing this. And I love that you're doing them as singles because for two reasons. Number one, it means it's getting done. The whole big book is not just this abstract idea that you're going to get around to do. Like you have a reason to be forced into doing it every single month. And when people picks it up, like what's 99 cents to you? It's like nothing, right? Plus you get a book and you get something that's definitely worth 99 cents. But meanwhile, those 99 cents purchases add up and they make a huge difference to Tom Merritt, who you guys like. I love this whole, I don't know, I don't want to say gift economy, but this ability to take out so many middlemen to where, you're able to create this amazing content and everyone's able to get you the cash you deserve for it.
Thanks, man. And scam stuff too. We'll be talking about that in the future.
Yeah, big release coming out later this week. I'll talk to you about it next week.
Let's get under surveillance for the meantime.
It's all about location.
I'm excited.
Under surveillance.
I said it like it's a blanket. Let's get under the surveillance. It's a security blanket.
Let's hide from the outside world and get under surveillance. Hey, man, this is a big surprise.
Yeah. Joss Whedon's latest production is a film called In Your Eyes. It debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival with a trailer last Friday. Everybody was like, oh, great. Now we're going to have to wait like 6 months to a year to see this because it takes forever for these indie films to get in theaters. Nope, you can watch it today. Available for 72-hour rental on Vimeo for $5. Joss Whedon said, this is exciting for us because we get to explore yet another new form of distribution, and we get $5.
I'll tell you what, this is exactly what we were just talking about with your content.
I know.
This is and think about this. This is something that has totally soured folks like Kevin Smith, where he swore he was going to retire for a little while, saying, I'm done making movies. It killed him that your production budget could be $2 million, that distribution and marketing could spend $30 million, and then when your movie makes, $35 million, they call it a failure, even though you get back massive amounts on your investment. The fact that they're able to do this, and what a terrifyingly, I don't want to say it's not dumb. It's like, if you want something to make money, it doesn't make sense to me that you would release it without any promotion or marketing and just have it be a surprise. But the fact that they were able to keep so much of a percentage of this $5 that they can afford to try that and see if just the buzz and word of mouth is able to compensate for all the marketing stuff. I love it. I think it's great.
I noticed there's like 7 of you out there who are like, can you tell us what the stupid thing's about? Yes. I know it's Joss Whedon and it's probably awesome. But yes, In Your Eyes is a film. It was written by Joss Whedon, directed by Bryn Hill, that is about 2 people who can experience the world through each other's eyes. And they discover this when one of them is young. This was the trailer that we saw on Friday. One of them is young and on a sledding accident hits a tree. And the other one is a young boy in class who like falls out of his chair because of that, because he's experiencing this through their eyes. And of course, as they grow up, you see how their story intertwines because of this weird connection they have.
Yeah, cool idea. And my guess is it was fairly cheap to produce, which makes it possible for them to release straight to video, for $5. Somebody in the chat room is pointing out that $5 a head for a rental seems a bit high. I could see that, but for a brand new release, certainly in a world where we saw Tower Heist, they were charging like $45 to rent while it was in theaters. It was ridiculous. It may be.
I mean, if you rent movies from iTunes and Vudu, they range from $2.99 to $4.99. So this is at the higher end, and maybe that's not right for a movie of this level. But it is Joss Whedon, and it is on Vimeo, and it is experimental. So I don't think it's ridiculously out of the range. I mean, $5 is not something you would never see on a movie.
If I may add something, this is kind of a monumental thing because right now, on average, about 60% or more of movie budgets are for advertising only.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely the whole thing. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, let's. We ready for the front lines, Brian?
Yeah, I am.
Front lines.
We start off after surveying more than 24,000 U.S. adults. Experian Marketing Services found that households with a Netflix or Hulu subscription were nearly 3 times as likely not to have a cable subscription than the average household. In total, 6.5% of the surveyed households did not subscribe to cable in 2013, up from 4.5% in 2010. And Experian said, we used to look at cord cutting as this weird little fringe thing, and now it looks like it's actually growing. It's actually turning into a real thing.
Yeah, and certainly 6.5% from 4.5 doesn't sound like a brain exploding like it's taking over the world. But again, this is a geometric progression we're seeing. This is the compound numbers of essentially it's 50% again. If it does that every year, you're going to see a very different landscape in just 2 or 3 more years.
Yeah, it would be close to 10% if it followed that same progression. And
Yeah. All right.
Certainly, but okay.
Roku has added search to its mobile apps for users of Roku 3 boxes. The search already works for Roku's streaming stick. Other Roku models are expected to snag the upgrade in following weeks. How much horsepower does it take to add this kind of thing to on there? Like, I know it says other Roku models. Like, are there any Roku models that have become irrelevant because they're too far behind?
The original model. You can't even get the new operating system for the original model. Because I know that because I have it. Mm-hmm. So I finally took it out of the bedroom and replaced it with a Roku 2. My old Roku 2 is now in the bedroom. And so that one's downstairs and it never gets used.
Right on. So I guess in that regard is similar to like older iOS devices.
The weird thing for me is like pulling out the phone to search the Roku, because I have a universal remote. That's kind of an extra step to have to do the search that way.
Yeah.
But having that keyboard does make it nice.
Yeah. Right on, man. All right. Let's jump on to the next
LG
one.
released an open source SDK called Connect on Thursday that, when implemented in software, lets developers send video to not only LG TVs, but Chromecast adapters and Roku streaming boxes. It can support all of the common multi-screen and home media sharing protocols, including Google's Cast SDK, DLNA, and Dial. And LG is going to try to get AirPlay and Samsung TV supported in this as well. The idea is somebody making an app for mobile or desktop can have one button, and it doesn't matter what device you got on the other end. It'll AirPlay it essentially to that device.
Oh my God, that would be so huge. And it's, I love this. And what a counterintuitive thing for them to, like, they understand that by supporting this open standard, they're only going to make things better for themselves in the long run. But this is not the way traditionally these kinds of manufacturers think. Usually they're thinking proprietary everything.
No, it's so smart because LG's like, do we make all the developers develop directly for us, or do we come up with an SDK that rides in on the coattails?
Yeah. Hey, man, a 25-page long thread on Apple support forum contains complaints from several users of the first-generation Apple TV device, that's me, who cannot access the iTunes Store to download or stream movies, TV shows, or podcasts. Other internet functions like YouTube seem to work fine. The first gen was sold between 2007 and 2010. Newer Apple TVs added 3 new channels today. Subscribers of DirecTV, Verizon Fios, and Cablevision Optimum can now access apps for Lifetime, A&E, and the History Channel, which we just talked about. Man, that old Generation 1 Apple TV, I guess I just got to throw mine out. It still sits there like a brick, not doing anything.
Yeah, mine's in this box right here. So I haven't been using mine either, but kind of crappy for people. I mean, somebody bought one in 2010. That thing's only 4 years old and it can't connect to iTunes. So hopefully they fix that soon. And like I said, Lifetime, A&E, and History Channel now available as apps on Apple TV. Wouldn't be surprised to see an Apple Pass of something.
Soon.
I don't know about soon, but sometime. Hey, Torrent Freak has a ghostly account of the fate of developers who try to take over the Popcorn Time BitTorrent streaming service. You remember the first people who did it said, yeah, we can't talk about why, but we're not doing it anymore. And then other developers rode to the rescue. Previously talkative developers have now deleted their work from GitHub. They've gone silent. They've disappeared, or all of the above. One developer who goes by the Reddit name the Isra17 wrote on Reddit, all you need to know is that I'm still alive and moved on to other projects. I can't really tell you anything more than that, and I won't contribute any more to Popcorn Time.
Man, this is dark. This is scary stuff. And you know what it makes me think of? There's this fascinating article last week on cracked.com talking about what it's like to be a whistleblower. And I'll use my extension on this to talk about it. What it's like to be a whistleblower. And it was co-written with the chick who blew the lid off. I want to say like Chase was selling like $200 million of bad debt. And it was like illegal as all hell. So she's the one who turned it over to the authorities. And, she was fired seconds later. And for the next like several years, as she's testifying to Congress, there are black vans that follow her around. There's 3 times she's caught private investigators in her house, like breaking in. And all of this, I assume, it was certainly not legal or encouraged, but is the reality. Whenever there's so much money behind something, it makes sense to invest in ways that are effective. And if you say this is 7 people putting forth their effort to create this universally, this horrifying, simple way for us to access all this pirated content, if I, as horrific as it is to say, if I'm one of these major powerhouses, it seems like it's worth spending a few $1 million to discourage them from working on it.
Is this the first time that the internet won't route around a problem? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hey man, BBC Three will make all 6 episodes of Jonah from Tonga available on iPlayer starting May 2nd for 48 hours. The shows will be broadcast normally on air starting May 8th. It's part of a simulcast with Australian network ABC's iView service. So this is interesting to me. This is the entire series available at once, and then they're going to trickle it out over the airwaves later?
Yeah. I remember BBC Three is the network that's going to go digital only eventually. So this is sort of, I guess, preparing the way or testing the ground for that. But I thought it was interesting. They're not just putting them on the iPlayer first, but they're just putting them all on the iPlayer. It's a binge view opportunity.
Well, and a limited window one too. That's
for
another
48
weird
hours,
thing, right?
exactly. It's kind of weird.
I wonder if they're just playing with different ideas just to see how they turn out.
It may have more to do with the fact that the Australian network ABC wants to do this, and the BBC were like, "Yeah, all right, we'll play along too." But it is interesting to see more and more of these little cracks in the facade as networks all around the world go digital only here and there.
Yeah. I think we're just going to see more of that stuff. Hey, man, you want to move back on track to the movie draft?
Yeah, of course I do, because I'm in first place.
Damn it.
Wow, did Transcendence bite it? Whoa.
Yeah, so was that your movie? Whose was that?
No, that was God's Moneybags. That was Will and Father Roberts.
Man, I'd hate to say it, but God's Moneybags is a third of the way through their budget. They haven't even made $100 million yet. That is not encouraging.
Wow, $10 million for Transcendence, which I mean, I knew it wasn't going to do well, but I assumed it would be at 30, 40, maybe. That is really, really, really bad. Also, Rio 2 didn't do that great in its second week out. It's still only at $75 million, whereas Captain America won the box office again.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a big surprise. I did not think... I thought for sure that a sequel to a popular release like Rio would have come back, but I don't know that it's a flop. It's just way underperformed. But then also, we're not quite to the summer season yet. We haven't had a holiday weekend or anything, so it's a bit early to be relying on those tentpoles.
This week, you're not going to get a lot of progress here. It's the first film of Team Amtrekker, and it's The Other Woman, so it's not expected to do huge amounts anyway.
Yeah, but right around the corner, May 2nd, Amazing Spider-Man 2 Slash Films premiere. That could be a big one.
Yeah, that's going to be the next tentpole movie after Captain America. So
here's the
we'll
question.
Start to see.
Do you think Captain America holds on to number one a third or fourth weekend this weekend?
It could. I mean, given the fact that there really isn't that much else out this week, it might. Definitely Amazing Spider-Man 2 knocks it off the next week.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I suppose you're wondering what we've been watching, so it's time for On Screen.
Yeah, which we're going to show you on this VHS tape.
I've been watching VHS tapes.
Not on a television, just sitting there staring at them.
Just looking at them. Like old recordings of Late Night with David Letterman from the 80s.
What are you watching?
I'm watching a lot this week. I'm totally sucked into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought that these past 3 episodes have been some of their best, and this last week's episode really, really sucked me in, and I can't wait to find out what happens next week now. I also am back in with Warehouse 13. Its triumphant return. Orphan Black premiered as well. Warehouse 13 available Amazon Video on Demand. Orphan Black available on iTunes. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. over the air or available on demand as well. And we'll talk about it in spoiler time. I watched The S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 8.
Oh, great. Also, I assume Game of Thrones and Cosmos as well.
Yeah, that should go without saying. We've been talking about that every week in It's Spoiler in Time, and I did watch those as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you, how good is Orphan Black? I know absolutely
Great.
Nothing about it. Is it like Battlestar Galactica season 1 good?
No, it's not Battlestar Galactica great because it's not that kind of show. Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn at the beginning. You don't realize how great it is off the top. You're like, okay, this is an interesting concept, and Tatiana Maslany seems to be able to pull off a couple, and then they keep throwing clones at you, and they keep throwing more, and you forget that Tatiana Maslany is playing all of these clones, and then on top of that, the mystery is compelling, and you get Max Headroom playing the guy named Leaky.
Wait, Matt Frewer is in it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And then you've got this mystery, kind of lost like mystery about like where did this scientific project come from? How does it plug into Leaky's machinations, and who's behind it, and who's the secret people behind it? And you suspect people, and then they get uncovered, and you find out, well, that's only one layer of the onion. And the season premiere just blew me away.
What season is it in now? Is it?
This is the
2?
second season.
Okay, so all right, so it's still early enough to jump in on. Right on. I have been watching shows with the kids. I finally watched all of season 2 of regular show. That show.
I gotta catch up. That was really fun to start watching. I got to get back into that.
Yeah, no, they're really, really great.
Hello, Governor.
Hello, Governor. Once we finished it, it recommended that we watch Mad, another Cartoon Network original. That show is way better than you would expect it to be, being a Cartoon Network show. It is like they make some biting commentary. The bits it's very similar to Robot Chicken in that they get in, they make the joke, and if it's a 3-second joke, then it's a 3-second segment in there. I really enjoyed it. And there's cheesy, silly parts, but I don't know if they're still making those or not, but I hope they are because I thought it was well done. And of course, HBO or Game of Thrones and Cosmos, which we'll talk about later.
Absolutely. So all of these things are available without subscription, except for Game of Thrones, which is only available by borrowing someone's login for HBO Go.
Yeah.
Time for some dispatches from the front. Dispatches from the front seems more like pondering missives from my tea time chair.
That's kind of how it is. That's what our life is like. We sit there and sip tea and read your letters, including like this one. From Frank. He says, "Hey, Brian and Tom, here's an article from Market Watch about live streaming content and cable cutters. It suggests that the cost of subscribing to live streaming services could end up costing more than cable, especially when streaming sports are involved. What I found interesting, though, is the cord-cutting calculator web app mentioned in the article. It recommends the best options and monthly savings based on your viewing choices. Might be interesting to Cordkillers audience. He gives the links. We'll make sure to put those in the show notes. But I don't doubt that it's possible to spend a lot more money to buy everything a la carte than you would spend on cable, but that's kind of not our point on this show. Our show isn't, the way to save cash and give the middle finger to cable companies. It's about watching what you want when you want. And I've said before, they could get that same $140 out of me again if they would just offer it in the way I want it.
Here's the thing. You'll see a lot of people, some of whom are propagandizing on behalf of the industry, some of whom are not, saying, well, be careful what you wish for, because in the end, it's going to be more expensive, because if you don't have people subsidizing the sports are going to be really costly. Well, okay, if that were true, that would mean that people who want to watch sports would have to pay more, and people who don't would want to pay less. The fact of the matter is, nobody knows what the marketplace would be if it was open for anybody to go a la carte and pay for whatever they want. Nobody knows what those dynamics would be. It could be more expensive. It probably would be more expensive for some people and not as expensive for others. Because the other thing about cord cutting is it gives you the power to choose what to watch.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe you decide, you know what, it's worth more for me because I get to control what sports are on there. Or maybe you say, actually, I am saving money because I didn't want to watch all of that stuff. And I've decided it's not worth it to pay for that. And I'm only going to pay for this one service. My whole thing is not about saving money or not saving money. My whole thing is about having the control of what you want to watch and being able to make a decision about it yourself instead of what we've lived with for 20, 40 years, which is we're stuck with pretty much having to take everything they give us and the one price for it.
Well, and keep in mind that there was a time when more was always better. More channels was always an important way to sell new services. And, when satellite came along, it was like thousands of channels were like, oh my God, thousands of channels. But we're entering an age where less is more for most consumers. It's like I want exquisitely precise programming for that speaks exactly to what I want, because we all realize we're not going to watch a billion channels.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we have tiers now, right? Is people decided like, oh, you know what? I don't really need this many channels. And they're like, yes, but you want this one channel. So we're going to put it on a tier with the 8 other channels you don't care about it. And you will pay because you want to get that one channel.
Right.
Those are the days I want to see end. I want to see it where it makes more sense. It puts you back in charge, and that will actually be better for the market. You're likely to spend in aggregate more money that way. It's just that the people who are making the most money now might not be the people who are making the most money in that situation, and therefore they have a vested interest in resisting it.
Yeah, there really will be like I don't know, like a whittling down. It'll be like sink or swim, because a lot of these are conglomerations where you got like crap channels that are bundled with popular channels because they happen to be owned by the same company.
Our next email comes from Chad, who says, is there any way you can get rid of the scrolling chat room on the video podcast? It's really distracting.
I thought this was an interesting question because I love it. I love the live chat being there. To me, it is a podcast equivalent of a live studio audience. We don't physically belong in the same space. We're not. We don't physically bring in an audience, but the feedback there, I think, it's part of the live experience, and I feel like it should be part of the recorded experience as well. So I don't know. I thought I'd kick it out to, certainly it doesn't affect audio listeners one way or the other, but I'd be curious if anyone else. But do you like it, Tom?
No, I was just imagining like the audio equivalent would be just little whispers.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to die. I like it. It helps with things in context. Yes, move the window down. Boo, distraction here. Read me. I have dealt with this issue since 1999.
And?
Because we used to stream chat on ZDTV and later Tech TV programs. And there were always people who said, I hate it. I don't want it. And there were always people who said, no, I love it. It's great. It's a matter of taste. And the only thing we could do back then was kind of have chat come up sometimes and then disappear others, and tell people if you want it all the time, go to the chat room, obviously. I think a lot of people do love it because somebody wrote into Daily Tech News Show the other day and said, hey, can you put your chat room on screen like they do on Cordkillers? That's really cool.
No kidding.
I love it.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm not saying Chad's wrong. It's just that some people like it, some people don't.
Well, as long as the maximum number of people are deriving a benefit, if you guys want to chime in, feel free to drop us an email over here. We got an email from John that says, hey, Tom and Brian, I really like the show. I noticed that you talk about TV and movies a lot, but not that much about live sports. Of course, there are the big subscription options from MLB, NBA, etc., but there are a lot of other free options that I noticed not many people know about. In fact, I started a website to help people like me easily see what sports are streaming every day, bitwitch.com. That's BITWHICH, like witch bit, but it's Bitwitch. Not Bitwitch like a sandwich made of bits. Please take a look. By the way,
bit
none of that is what
pick?
he wrote. That's me talking about it. Please take a look and tell me what you think and keep up the good work. I went on over to bitwitch.com. It's really slickly put together, and it keeps you posted on all that stuff.
I was very frightened that this was a site that gets together a bunch of illegal or unauthorized streams, and it's not. But the other side of that is a lot of the things that I saw linked when I tested it were things that you had to have a cable subscription to be able to play. Like the NBC sports stuff just says like log in with your provider and be able to watch the sports here. And ESPN has a similar sort of thing. So it's a great website. I just don't want people to think, oh, this is the magic thing that will allow me to watch all the live sports. Some of it you can. Yeah. And it's a great site nonetheless for just aggregating all of those possible streams.
Yeah. Very slickly put together. Thanks for sharing that with us.
And finally, Joel wrote in and said, just wanted to say great job. Thanks, Joel. Oh, wait, no, he said more. I know you've talked about how if Fox or CBS pulled their over-the-air, he means their over-the-air broadcast, and did it themselves, that you'd be fine with that. But some of us are in a fairly unique situation where we live close enough to the American border that we can easily pick up all the stations meant for Detroit with an over-the-air antenna. If they went off the airwaves, I'm sure you'd be forced to authenticate, or at least some kind of region lock, where us border-living Canadians would be forced to deal with global TV and CBC. Shudders. Hey, I've watched some shows on both those networks. They're not that bad, but I know what you're saying, right? Which is right now, you benefit from the physical limits of the medium in the way that they can't stop the signal from broadcasting over borders, so you get to pick it up. That is exactly the kind of thing we argue against legislating for. We're like, you know what? The fact that the way it used to work has this side benefit doesn't mean you should keep it that way. So in this case, I have to say, Joel, that would be one of the sacrifices of the internet, is that ability to get those over-the-air broadcasts in Canada without having to pay for them. Because none of those advertisers are counting Canadian audiences either. You're just living off the mistake.
Yeah, it's a little bit like your house happens to be right next to a drive-in movie theater, and you get accustomed to the fact that you can watch all the new releases out your window by tuning your radio to 88.9 FM or whatever, and then one day they switch to a system that doesn't send over FM, and all of a sudden you don't have it. Unfortunately, you're not entitled to it. But also, let's face it, if it is region locked, it's pretty easy to get around that kind of stuff. Not that we necessarily condone or discondone it, but I don't know that much changes for you in a practical sense.
I guess what I would say is, while I totally understand the bummer aspect of it, sometimes technology impacts corporations and industries, and we talk about that a lot. Sometimes it impacts individuals like Joel, and that sucks for Joel. It also sucks for the industries. They have to change their business models, but we all benefit in the end. And that would be my recommendation is we should come up with a way where Joel can watch anything he wants from these broadcasters in a way that satisfies those broadcasters' ability to pay for their programming. So there should be a Hulu Canada, or there should be a way for him to pay the Detroit stations, a minimal amount of money to stream them over the air. Or there should be an Aereo Canada that brings in the broadcasters from Detroit or whatever. But there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get these same programs somehow legally and affordably if the over-the-air broadcasts go away.
Yeah, and it's all growing pains. It's like I'm increasingly optimistic that it's all going to get worked out. As to be honest, the reason I'm convinced it's all going to work out is not for the cord cutting generation; it's the cord never generation. The fact that they're coming into power and are soon to be the prime demographic to reach. They're going to have to rework the way they reach them, and there's going to be something that makes more sense.
Yeah, and a lot of those cord nevers are watching programs in places that none of you even think about as places to watch programs, right? Not even just YouTube, but there's all kinds of independent video creators and people passing around video and doing their own productions. My wife works at YouTube, and of course she's very excited about these YouTube commercials that have been showing, because it's taking YouTube native creators like Michelle Phan and putting them
Rosanna Pansino, who we had on NSFW back in the day. Yeah,
totally, and saying like these are major stars in their genre. And in their audience.
God, I'm so glad, by the way, to see YouTube doing that. Like that whole initiative to try to get quote unquote real Hollywood talent. I'm kind of glad that blew up in their face, and that they're instead realizing, wow, we have something with our YouTube generation. And that, of course,
are you talking about when they were funding channels?
Yeah, like your stuff. No, but just the whole idea of like bringing in Hollywood instead.
It wasn't
of
all Hollywood, though.
Right? Correct.
And I'll say that hasn't changed. They stopped funding the channels. The idea with funding the channels was, let's see if we can up the production value of YouTube, both by maybe getting in some Hollywood people, but also by funding some grassroots people as well. That didn't fail. It didn't work as well as they wanted to, but they're still trying to get Hollywood people and big celebrities to come in and use YouTube.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is specifically, I'm glad to see any kind of focus on celebrating the homegrown talent that they have. And that is new that we're seeing that put forward in their ads.
Anyway, good email, Joel. And hopefully you won't have to deal with this anytime soon. Eventually, over-the-air broadcasts are going to end. Like, I don't know when. Maybe it's 20, 30 years from now. I don't know. But just like analog broadcasts ended and we have digital broadcasts now, digital broadcasts are going to end. They're going to use that bandwidth for something else.
Something useful. At some point. Man, what a ridiculous way to spend bandwidth that we're doing right now. Just streaming out, entertainment content. It's like there's so much more valuable things to be done with
I said that, and somebody's like, actually, the efficiency and the amount of information you can pack in the bandwidth of an over-the-air broadcast is much better than what you can do on the internet. I'm like, yeah, and what's the return bandwidth like?
Right.
There isn't any.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you could make that argument. But frankly, it's not utilizing the airwaves to the level that they could be used, is my response to that.
Agreed. But if you want to tell us how wrong we are, make sure to write us over at cordkillers@gmail.com. Head on over to cordkillers.com, and you can use a little submit feedback button on there as well. Tell your friends about the show. We're glad you guys enjoyed it. We're glad you guys are here.
We love hearing from you. We love talking to you in the chat room. We love hearing people like Crash Kincaid saying maybe the reason SETI can't find anything is because all alien civilizations are cord cutters. That could be it. We'll see you next week on Cord Killers at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, got it right in there. Good job.
Doom, 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 doom.
Wow.